Hello, in this video lesson, we will create a 6-month study plan for the cat. No, these are the 6 months that we have. June, July, August, September, October and November. And I believe the likely date for cat 2020 is going to be on the 29th of November. It could change, but at this point in time, we'll go with that particular date. Now that would mean that we have 25 weeks. Now, 25 weeks is a lot of time. What is a good way to look at this 25 weeks? An easy way to look at it is let's just divide this 25 weeks into 5 sets. Week 1 to week 5, as let's say phase 1. Week 6 to week 10, phase 2. Week 11 to 15, phase 3. So week 16 to 20 as phase 4, and weeks 21 to 25 as phase 5. And then we could think of creating a calendar based on these 5 phases, which corresponds to each of these 5 set of weeks. And each of these phase, we have to come with certain objective, certain outcome that we're looking at. If we can identify the objective, then we can look at the tasks which we need to do to achieve that particular objective. And that's what we'll try and look at. So let's start with what is my objective. The overall objective is pretty clean. I am writing the CAD because I want to go to a particular B school. And the B school has a particular cutoff for the CAD. And that cutoff is essentially based on the percentile score. So some school needs you to get more than 99 percentile. Some schools look at 98 percentile. Some school look at 95 percentile. Some school look at 90th percentile score. There are also school which looks at 85 percentile, 80 percentile, and so on and so forth. And I need to look at my profile, my aspiration, the schools that I want to target, and what is the requirement of the school. There might be some school which actually requires more than 99 percentile, maybe 99.5. For example, I am Calcutta. Now, whatever is your target, the first step is to have the target set in your mind. Now, what you need to understand, percentile score is easy, but what score? CAT is out of 300 marks. There are 100 questions. Each question carries 3 marks. So, what is the score that I need? Now, a good way is to look at the CAT 2017, CAT 2018, CAT 2019 data to get some sense in terms of what could be the score that I'm aiming at. And this is the data. You see that across percentile, CAT 2017, the score was slightly higher, which would mean that that paper was slightly easier than the other 2 tests. But if you let's but I think that this will still give some sense. If you're looking at some 99 percentile plus score, overall I'm looking at a score which is about 160. Right. If we're looking at the 98th percentile score, I'm looking at something which is very close to 140, 145. 95th percentile score, I'm looking at a score which is probably close to 130-ish. And 90th percentile score, I just want to cross the score of 100, maybe 110. Now, this also depends on the difficulty level of the paper. Now, if you are aiming a score of 150, given the fact that each question carries 3 marks, we're looking at 50 questions net correct. Given that there are 100 questions, you're looking at 50 percentage marks. Now, what you have to figure out is what is your target. It is your life, your target. You decide which school do you want to target. That school. What is the requirement of that particular school? And therefore, pinpoint. Look at one number in your mind and have that number right now. Write it down somewhere and post it in your room. And you see that number every single day. Now, once you have the number, my recommendation is to aim for the moon. If you are looking at a 95th percentile as your target, look for a 90th percentile. Work for a 98th percentile. If you're looking at 98th percentile as your target, work for a 99th percentile score. If you're looking at 99th percentile as a target, look for a 99.5, 99.6, 99.8 percentile score. If you're looking at 99.5 percentile as your target, then look for almost close to 100 percentile. If you want to hit 99.5 plus, then your score needs to get very close to 200 out of 300. Whatever be your target, keep the target in mind. And then we can start putting that number somewhere. So overall objective is that we have to hit 99.9 percentile in the CAT. Now you figure out what your number is. And therefore that would mean that on the last phase, I have to hit that target. On the D-Day, I have to hit that target. I have to hit that particular score. And whatever I need to do during phase 1, 2, 3, 4, I have to work towards that particular goal. So how do I get there? Now we need to understand the test. What are we facing? What is the task that we have at hand? Now the cat from 2015 had this pattern. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 had this pattern. Therefore, likely that cat 2020 will also have this exact pattern. Three sections: verbal ability and reading comprehension, data interpretation, logical reasoning, quantitative aptitude or quantitative ability. VARC, verbal ability and reading comprehension, 34 questions. DILR, 32 questions. QA, 34 questions, totaling 200. Fair. But what is in VARC? If you look at verbal ability and reading comprehension, you have reading comprehension, 24 questions from 5 passages. And verbal ability 10 question comes from these type of questions: paragraph jumble, 4 questions; odd sentence in a paragraph, 3 questions; paragraph summary in 3 questions. And if you look at the VARC section of the CAT, what you see is that the, it's a test of comprehension. It is not a test of knowledge. It's a test of application, not a test of your knowledge. The VARC section of the CAT does not test you grammar and does not test your vocabulary. No, vocabulary would be very useful when you read passages, but the fundamental thing that is being tested, your ability to comprehend. If you look at verbal ability, you have paragraph jumble, odd sentence in a paragraph, paragraph summary. This is about evaluating a paragraph. And what is reading comprehension? You're given a passage which is a combination of paragraphs. So at the end of the day, do you understand a paragraph? Can you connect between a paragraph number 1 to paragraph number 2? Now, if you have that skill of comprehension, I'm sure that you will do well in VARC. What about data interpretation, logical reasoning? Yes, it has got data interpretation and logical reasoning. 8 sets in total, each set having 4 questions, 4 sets of data interpretation, 4 sets of logical reasoning. Total 32 questions. And you are given any kind of data. The data can be in form of some sort of a table. The data can be in form some sort of a chart. The data can even be in form of pure information given to you in a paragraph. And data can even be a combination of multiple graphs. It can some data is presented to you and you ask to interpret that. Logical reasoning questions can be different types. It may be questions where you have to arrange a certain set of people in some form with certain rules that is given to you. It probably can be to group certain people into some form. It can be a combination of both. And there might be question which has got a little bit of data involved plus logical reasoning. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, it is not testing your knowledge. If you have the ability to look at a data set and interpret the data set, make inferences from the data set using bare minimum maths that is needed to do that, your DLR is done. What about quantitative aptitude? These are arithmetic, algebra, geometry, numbers, and modern maths. And the number of questions within each of these sections is not fixed. But if you look at the last 4 to 5 years, it has largely been dominated by arithmetic and algebra. About 12 questions from arithmetic, about 9 from algebra, about 6 from geometry, about 4 from numbers, and 3 from modern maths. Modern maths would include topics like permutations, combinations, and probability, and so on and so forth. So these are all topics that you probably would have done in your 10th standard, right? Or we only think that the question might come a little twisted. There's no straightforward question, but it's still the concept that is required is maths. So these are the things that I need to do. So if I look at my calendar, I have to build certain concepts, right? I have to build certain foundation. So good way to look at this is that in the first 2 weeks, can I build my necessary concept? Can I do all the quantitative ability chapters and understand every single concept? Can I understand how to solve data interpretation question, how to solve logic reasoning question? Can I build my basic concept fundamentals in looking at how to solve a paragraph summary question, how to solve a paragraph jumble question, how to solve reading comprehension question? Within reading comprehension question, how to solve a question that asks me the main idea, how to solve a question that asks me to draw an inference, how to solve a question that is a specific recall question. So that is a thing that I would want to do in the first 2 phases. It will require that much time. But the thing is, should we not know where am I now before we get started into what is that I have to study? How much should I study? I should know where I am now. That's a journey probably we'll have to take to reach the finish spot. But the question is, where is my start? Now, 6 months means that start is the starting point of 6 months. But in terms of my score, where is my start? I need to get, let's say, a score of 160 in the CAT. But where am I doing? So am I at 100? Am I at 120? Where am I? Am I here? Purpose? Or am I there? Am I very close to the finish line already? How do I understand that? And a good way to understand that is to take a diagnostic mock test. Diagnostic mock test simply means the first test that you take without any sort of preparation, the test that you take now. You get the score, and then you know that how far you are from that finish line. If you don't know that starting point, you don't know the journey at all. You don't know the challenges that you're going to face in the journey. So therefore, without taking a diagnostic test, you're going nowhere. The starting point is to take a diagnostic test, and yes, without any preparation. You must understand that these tests, reading comprehension, data interpretation, maths, you will have some skills already that you have learned over the years. I need to understand how much of the skills that I have already and how much I need to build. If I don't take the diagnostic test before I start my preparation, you have no clue. It's like solving a problem when you don't know what the problem is. Right. So the first thing that I want you to do is take a diagnostic mock test. Task number one is done. That's a first step. Now, what do I do after taking the diagnostic mock test? What now? Okay, I know my start. I'm starting, let's say, at that particular point. I know my finish line. The, but am I sure of my start? Is that actually my starting point? Is that I've taken just one test? Okay, should I take two tests, three tests to understand where my actual start is? You have those three sections. And let's say that is a target score. Let's say you decided in each of the section that you have to achieve. VRC, I need to get to 75. DLR, I have to get to 50. QA, I have to get to something close to 60. And I took the mock test, which is in green color. That's a score that I've got. 30 in VRC, let's say 10 in DLR, 20 in QA, and that seems to be my gap. So when you take the mock test, what you need to understand, there are certain questions that I got right. So that's in green color. Certain question I got wrong. Certain question I did not solve. Now, if this you have taken under a test condition, and this is probably the first time you have taken a test, and you have all those things. So time management might be an issue. You've got a lot of other things. This is not a true reflection, in one sense, about your ability. It's not a true reflection. What I actually want to do after the test is to actually retake the whole test without any time limit. I mean, yes, I said retake without actually looking at the explanatory answers. Just have a look at those things. So now what could happen is that all the questions that you got wrong, some may be right and some may be wrong, which means you probably would have done some silly mistake. You had the knowledge, you could not implement the knowledge in the test. And if you look at the questions that you, let's say, missed, some question actually you could have solved just because you didn't have time. You have not developed that skill set of being a good test taker. But it is very important for me to do the retake, and those corrects is actually my Aukaat or my potential, my real story. And that is important for me to know. So let's say my real story is the fact that if I had all the time with me, in VRC I would have got a score of 45, in DL I would have got a score of 30, and QA I would have got a score of 30, 35. And this particular Aukaat score is absolutely crucial in your journey. Just by taking a mock test, and whatever score that you get in the mock test, don't make any sort of inference based on that. only after doing the whole questions once again. And yes, it takes time, but that is an important time that you have to invest. Once you do the test once again, then you'll understand the real gap. And then you see the blue red line is a gap of test strategy, which means while taking the mock test in VARC, I got a score of 30. When I took it later without any time limit, I got a score of 45, which means that it's not a knowledge issue. That 15 is about test taking strategy. Maybe I should have not spent time in one particular question. Uh, maybe I should have looked at some order in which I'll attempt a particular question. And that's a test strategy gap. The other gap, which is from a 45 to 75, that's an Aukaat gap. What does that mean? When I retook the test, I got a score of 45. I have to reach till 75. Now that is a gap. That's a gap that I have to fill. Right? I spent all the time that I had. I'm still getting a score of 45, which means I have to learn more. So I need to look at the Aukaat gap and I have to look at the test strategy gap. Now let's go back to calendar. I need to first understand my Aukaat. After taking the diagnostic mock test, don't cry, don't sleep. Okay, don't feel like, oh my goodness, this is too long a journey. I don't know whether I should be able to make it. The next immediately is like a machine. Understand your Aukaat score. Redo all the question once again. Exactly understand the score. And this is something that you have to do for every single mock test. Second, in the first two phases, let's fill the Aukaat gap by saying that let me have all the necessary concept that is needed to crack the test. And in the third and fourth stages, let me worry about a test strategy gap. How do I become a better test taker? Or is there any better way to solve a particular question? Can I look at options and eliminate questions in quant, for example? In DLR, how do I decide on the 8 set that is given to me? Should I spend time in the beginning and look at which test I'm going to attack? In VRC, what is the strategy that I need to adopt? That's something that you have to build in phase number 3 and phase number 4. So the thing that you have to do in phase number 1 is to say that I want to build my Aukaat. In phase number 1 and 2, phase number 3 and 4, I have to develop awesome test taking skills. Now, at this point in time, I should also tell you that there is no end point to building Aukaat. You still can continue to do that to phase 3, phase 4. But my primary focus is to get to that particular score. And probably it's around the phase 4 when you start deciding these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. I probably cannot address these weaknesses. I have to let it be. I just have to ensure that this weakness does not harm me. So let me further strengthen my strength. You'll have to look at all that kind of thing in phase 3 and phase 4. And phase 5 is the last phase when he's saying that, okay, I'm going to crack it now. I've understood who I am. I put in all my effort. Then I have to start my work. Right. Let's look at how to bridge the OCAT gap now. We have to look at those three areas: verbal ability, reading comprehension, data interpretation, logical reasoning, and quantitative aptitude. Let's start with verbal ability and reading comprehension. I have to look at reading comprehension and paragraph based questions. When I talk about paragraph based question, I'm looking at paragraph summary, paragraph jumble, odd sentence in a paragraph. Those are the things that I need to look at. Now, how do I start looking at preparing for this particular test? What I can actually do is do brute force. I'm going to power it through. So the more reading comprehension I'm going to solve, probably the better I'll get. The more paragraph based question I solve, the better I'll get. We're going to just do it with brute force, power it through and solve as many as we can. Can we actually looking at in the initial phase to look at 150 passages? Maybe you can add more, maybe 300. Um, in paragraph based question, can I look at solving 300 questions, 100 each in each of these area? I'm looking at 150 passages. And if I look at some time for each of these passages, for example, each passage may take about 10 minutes to solve. That turns out to be roughly about 25 odd hours. And we look at 3 minutes for each of these questions, that roughly about 15 odd hours, adding total about 40 hours. And you can eventually figure out what is the time. I'm just giving you a rough estimate to create a rough plan. And then this 40 hours then be spread into the phase 1, which is week 1 to week 5, and phase 2, week 6 to week 10, 20 hours a week. We're looking at 5 weeks in every phase, 4 hours per week. So there you have it. We can put 4 hours per week for VRC in in phase number one and phase number two per week, not per day, per week. That's what I need to look at. Now, while I talk about brute force, there's also certain skills that I need to build. For example, the passages can be from any genre: science, social sciences, natural sciences, business. It can be from art, literature, philosophy, and anything. So and we might have certain issues with respect to certain type of passages that we have not read. So the good idea to build certain skills, which means I have to read. Let's read articles. Ion essays, for example, that's a good site. It's got a lot of essays. Each essay is probably about 3,000 words. And given the speed, let's say you can speed about, if your reading speed is about 200 words per minute, 2,000 would be about what, 10 minutes? Maybe about, maybe in some tough passages, maybe about 15 minutes per day, one article. You can probably pick up Smithsonian Magazine, and that's an online site available. That they have got a lot of article. 1843 Magazine, if you want to look at some art kind of passages. You can also pick up editorials, Hindu or Indian Express. Read editorials, or even, for example, editorials of Guardian, newspaper like Guardian or New York Times. And let's create this habit of saying that I want to read articles. Maybe have that as a habit. I'm not counting it as a preparation for the cat, but I need you to build that particular habit of spending 4 hours per week. So let's add that. I need to read 4 hours per week. I just read throughout, right? Why not? And that's a good habit to have. That's anyway going to help you till the very end, because at the end of the day, if, the entire paper is in English, so it's better to get that skill set, and it's a good habit to have. So let's just read throughout the whole phase. What about DILR, data interpretation and logical reasoning? Brute force again. We are just have to, there is no, there is, yes, you have to understand the various process in which how to attack a question. Somebody gives me a question on set theory. What is a process how to attack? Somebody gives me a question on arrangement. What is the process of attacking that particular question? Somebody gives me a question on, let's say, a data set. What is the process of attacking the question? The best way to learn this is to use brute force. Let's do 100 DI sets, 100 LR sets in these first two phases. That means we are looking at, if I count about 12 minutes per set, roughly, we're looking at close to about 40 hours. That means week 1, 20 a week, 1 to 5, 20 hours, week 6 to 10, 20 hours, and that will translate into 4 hours per week. So our data interpretation, logical reasoning, we can look at something that is 4 hours per week in phase 1 as well as phase 2. What about quantitative ability? We have to build skill concepts. I think some of you, in your, these are all things that you studied. Maybe you have to relearn everything once again. I'm sure that if I ask you Pythagoras theorem, I'm sure you'll still remember. But if I ask you some other theorem, maybe you would have forgotten it. Apollonius theorem. Ah, forgot. Trigonometry, do you remember? Do you remember all the concept of time, speed, and distance? And what you have to look at is those chapters. Arithmetic. This is number of chapters. Is a different book at different count. But I'm saying that roughly about 30 odd chapters is what you need to study. And I think that if you spend 2 hours per chapter, I think that we could have built a certain basic foundation. Okay. At this point in time, I should also tell you that there is not going to be any perfect study plan, right? Perfection is the enemy of good. Don't aim for perfection. Good is great, right? But there is no point when I can say that I have finished something. That point is very difficult to figure out in a test like this. It's about, let's do one phase. Let's say in first two phases we can spend about 62 hours. We have phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, where you where we can still do revision. We'll still take mock tests. We can still identify additional things to be done. But at least a completion needs to happen in phase 1 and 2, and plan it very carefully. So basically what we end up doing is that we start with one chapter, take it very slow, and take it for about 3 to 4 days. And after that, you look at the next chapter. By the time you're hitting the other one, you suddenly see that I have got a lot of things to do. So you basically say that I'll do about, I may not reach 100% efficiency in this area, but at least about 60%, 70%. So I may still have certain issues, but at least ensure that there is some sort of sense of completion that happens in this phase 1, and that would turn out to be close to about 6 hours per week. 10 weeks, 6 hours per week, 60 hours. That's your QA. Right. Ah, And then another thing that you have to look at in the whole journey is also mock test. And one of the things that most of us believe is that I have to take a mock test after my studies. This is the bad way of thinking. Your mock test is a preparation tool. Your mock test is a preparation tool. Let me repeat. It is not a test. A lot of us look at mock tests and say that I want to look at my score and say how much I studied. No, the mock test allows you to understand where you are. And the Aukaat score that I told you, the mock test helps you. For example, you moving from point one to point two, how much skills that you developed. Another thing, out of the three areas, verbal ability and reading comprehension and data independent logical reasoning, what chapters are we talking about here? If you take mock test, every single mock test has got 8 sets of data independent logical reasoning. If you do, let's say, 30 mock tests, that is 240 good sets of questions that you would have solved. And please understand this, because I have to do analysis of the test. The time to take a test, it is 3 hours. Time to do the analysis would be about 6 hours. Close to about 10 hours would be required for your mock test. If you want to have, if you want to do that, if you want to do 30 mock tests, that is 300 hours. 300 hours. And if you keep keeping the mock test towards the end, you still won't have any time to do anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely crucial and important that you do these mock tests on a regular basis. So, in your finish journey, mock test, diagnostic test, mock test, mock test, mock test, mock test, and probably towards the end, add a more mock test. And that is something that you must do. Right. And when you're taking a mock test, understand your mock score and your Aukaat score. Those two things are very important. And therefore, let's say in the first phase, we could start slow. Let's say that now we take about phase one, 3 mocks, phase two, 4 mocks, which is about roughly about a mock per week. And then phase three and phase four, you add more number of mock tests because there you're actually developing the skill set. This is a rough estimate that I've given. You can obviously change depending upon where you are. And in phase three and phase four, I will not spend too much time about phase three and phase four now. I will do a separate video on that. But it's a rough thing. What other thing that you want to look at in phase three and phase four is that I have to look at past CAT papers. I'm looking at section tests. I'm looking at the whole thing together and seeing that what is good to go through all the questions or the past CAT paper that is available to you. Do quite a bit of revision. The revision is based on, let's say, the mock. You've taken a mock test, you did the Aukaat score, you understand the gap that you still need to fill. Go back and revise those things, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, a clean and simple plan for you to ace the cat. So what now? These are the two things that the phase one and phase two, build the Aukaat gap, and this is the task that you have. When you add all the time that you have, we are looking at about 14 to 18 hours per week. And I'm sure that you have got 14 to 18 hours per week. Even if you're working very hard, I'm sure that you can take out 14 hours per week. Now, if you don't have 14 hours per week, whatever the reason, relook at the thing and see what is very important to you and adjust your schedule accordingly. And I hope, thank you so much. And I hope that this session made sense to you. And keep watching this channel where I post more and more video relating to your CAT preparation. Thank you and goodbye.